Hey everybody, Mark Agnesi here for Gibson TV. Today I have the pleasure to be joined by Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member and Epiphone signature artist, Nancy Wilson. Nancy, thank you for joining me today.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. We got a lot to talk about your guitar and all that, but before we even get to the guitar, let's talk about guitar playing a little bit, if you don't mind. When did you start playing guitar? How old were you, a kid?
Yeah, I was a little kid. I was about 8.
Yeah.
And, you know, we saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in like '63. And we were like, must have guitar, must have guitar.
That was the moment?
Yeah, that was the lightning bolt of the moment where we knew what the rest of our lives were going to be all about. And we came from such a musical family and military brats, like, you know, Marine Corps military brats. We were always stationed all the way, you know, all over the place, moving all the time. So we had a real strong sense of unity inside our family. And we did a lot of singing and playing and piano and ukuleles and harmonizing and, you know, old English pub songs and stuff. So yeah. Guitar was a natural progression from there.
Now, obviously today, we know from a lot of market research, women buy about 50% of the guitars that are sold these days.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't the same when you start. Did you ever get it was kind of a boys club back then. Did you ever get why do you want to play guitar, your girl stuff growing up?
Well, yeah, you're pretty good for a girl, you know, like
How sick were you of hearing that?
It got kind of old, and it's like, yeah, kind of like if you give monkeys a bunch of typewriters, eventually they'll do the Gettysburg Address, you know. So people would be their jaws would kind of drop because I had a real natural knack for playing the guitar. And I got good pretty fast. And so I used to go and kind of, you know, down to the music store, the Ma and Pa store, Bandwagon East, you know, and pick up one of the better guitars than what I had and sit around and play it. And people would be like, whoa, look at that little gal with that great big guitar playing going on there. And so I was really a show off with it, you know. So I was proud that I was different. And, you know, it's just kind of like a show off. I was a ham.
Do you remember your first guitar? Do you remember what your first guitar was?
It was unplayable, for one thing. It was like a 3/4 size, basically a piece of plywood with a huge, you know, pipe-shaped neck and a movable bridge at the bottom. But then I learned how to kind of keep it in tune by moving the bridge at the bottom while you're playing. So I think it was a Stella or a Lyle or something. Yeah. But it was unplayable. There was no way on earth you could play a barred F chord on that thing. So I got really strong. And when I finally got a real good guitar, I was a lot stronger because of that first really bad guitar.
Yeah. You remember when you got your first Gibson guitar?
The first Gibson guitar was a black Les Paul. And it weighed a ton, you know, and you didn't want to play it for very long in the set because your shoulder would, you know, be injured. But I, you know, I had to be like Jimmy Page, of course, and so I had to play a Gibson, you know, Les Paul.
I mean, you mentioned Jimmy Page. Who were some of your guitar influences when you were starting out?
Well, the Beatles, obviously, because, you know, they had that incredible sound that only they had coming from England and all that, you know, recycling kind of blues and soul music back into America from the English perspective. And, you know, they were such a tight band because they played everywhere for a long time first. like in Germany, and they played, you know, many sets per night, you know, getting good. And
Yeah.
there, John Lennon is such a good rhythm guitar player. He was never ahead of the tempo. He was always just perfectly behind, relaxed sounding rhythm player. So he was one of my biggest influences. And Jimmy Page, obviously. You know, a lot of the acoustic stuff I got from Paul Simon, Simon and Garfunkel, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, and huge influence on my acoustic playing. As a matter of fact, I think I play a lot like Neil Young on the acoustic, because I use it like a percussion instrument. You know, you're kind of beating on it instead of like delicately plucking away, you know. So
Well, the intro to Crazy has to be like the greatest acoustic guitar intro ever recorded.
thank you.
How did that come about? Was that something you stumbled on, something you were working on? How did you write that?
Well, we were recording in Vancouver the Dreamboat Annie, our first album, and there was a cool, like, we were listening to Yes a lot of the time those days, and they had like really, Steve Howe did really cool like acoustic intros to songs, and so we knew Crazy on You was going to be the first song, but it needed an intro just because in that part of the 70s and the mid 70s, you know, things were really musical that way. And it's like a concept you could put out there that it was more unusual today. Um, but I was actually trying to rip off something that Paul Simon had done. I think it was, which album was it? It was called Angie. It was an acoustic instrumental called Angie, which I'd had learned. And I was like, I want to do something like that. So I kind of ripped it off slightly, but it became, even when you're ripping stuff off, it becomes your own eventually. So, so I made Silver Wheels and then the intro to Crazy on You. And it's cute because people on Instagram and stuff, they learn it and then they play it on Instagram, you know. And it's an interesting thing to see because everyone has a whole different way of playing it.
Yeah.
It might sound pretty close, but all the positions are different. So ultimately flattering that people would want to like, okay, I'm going to learn this really hard thing, you know, and show and tell.
Do you spend a lot of time on Instagram looking at up and coming guitar players?
Yeah, I like to look at Instagram. I mean, people are funny, you know, and you see a lot of cool music stuff and new people coming, up and comers. And you know, it's a good distraction for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you have a brand new Epiphone signature guitar, the Nancy Wilson Fanatic Nighthawk, which is actually based on a former Gibson signature model that you had.
Right.
And I've seen you play Nighthawk guitars for years.
Yeah.
When did you first discover that guitar, and what is it about the Nighthawk that you love so much?
Well, years back, I designed the body shape for Gibson for that model.
That
And
was
they
your
made,
design. I see.
was,
I'm a kind of a
yeah.
Gibsonist. I did not know that.
I
That is
like
incredible.
I drew it on paper, and it's sort of imitation of a, a nude female's silhouette, you know. So then everything changed up with Gibson, and it kind of went under the table. But later, when I kind of ran across that guitar again, I said, "Well, hey, Epiphone, you want to make a guitar?" And they did. So, you know, we put it together for a little while, and now it's available. Now it's out there.
Very exciting. Now, the guitar is
Yeah.
called the Nancy Wilson Fanatic Nighthawk.
Yeah.
What is the symbolism of the Fanatic title?
Well, during the time we were in the kitchen trying to cook this guitar up, Hart was in the studio making an album that we called Fanatic. And I thought, you know, Nighthawk's cool, but something like Fanatic is cooler because, you know, it's like, that's how you feel if you're a guitar player. You feel kind of fanatical about being a big, you know, a big loud electric rock guitar is more like a fanatical thing to do than a Nighthawk sounds more, I don't know, like something a little more common to me. But fanatic really has power in the word. You know, there's power. It's a powerful word.
No. Now there's some cool things this guitar can do. There's mini humbucker, there's a full-size humbucker, there's a 5-position switch where you can get all sorts of stuff. Do you use all the bells and whistles on there to get different tones? Or is there like one setting that you're like, I'll leave it on this most of the night?
I mostly use one big fat distorted setting. What I usually go, I like to go through a really great tube amp, you know, like a Fender Deluxe. Old Fender Deluxe is my favorite. Or a Mesa Boogie, you know, which we might want to actually pair with those guys because they're close to where I live. They're really cool guys. But and I like the orange amplifiers too. They really so the Fanatic or the Nighthawk sounds so good in any of those amplifiers. And you know, I don't hardly use many pedals. I just go straight for the pure raw raunch.
Straight, just amp cable, guitar.
Yeah.
I love it.
Just plug it in, turn it up.
Obviously, this started as a Gibson version. Now it's an Epiphone version. The first one you got out of the box, tell me your first impression of the new Epiphone guitars.
Yeah, I mean, at first I was like, I'd rather have silver hardware than gold hardware, you know, but it was just, you know, cosmetics mostly. But the guts inside the guitar really sound good. And I think when a guitar like this, it kind of feels almost vintage, you know, in the way it configures, like the mahogany and how the neck feels. And, you know, it's like a really old friend already because it's kind of built to last and it's built like a vintage thing.
Yeah.
It's a good old new guitar.
Have you had a chance to, I know you're composing films and writing songs and doing the hard thing. Had a chance to use it yet on anything?
Well, I've been working on a new album, a solo album.
A solo record, cool.
Of my first studio solo album. And it's come into play, yeah. You know, I normally go for vintage guitars and vintage amplifiers, but the Fanatic has a special kind of place in certain kinds of songs for me, and it's all good. It all works.
When can we be expecting this Nancy Wilson solo album?
Yeah, it's coming up. It's called You and Me, and it's almost done. And I put out one single first called The Rising, which was a cover of that Bruce Springsteen song.
Yeah.
With a lyric video. And the next one's coming in this month that's called You and Me, which is the title track that's just got mastered. And so we're mastering right along, and March is probably end of February, early March is when everything will come out.
Now, if the world goes back slightly to normal, do you plan on touring as a solo artist as well?
Well, I would do that. I mean, right now, been talking to some friends in Seattle. My band is in Seattle. Mostly the Hart players that we were out with last time on the tour. So when we pass around all these files for the new songs, you know, we know each other as players well enough to kind of anticipate the other person's stylistic. So talking right now to another Seattle guy from the Seattle Symphony, and there's a plan afoot in April to do a show, either live streamed or a live show, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
And come out, do some solo acoustic stuff, then bring the band out, and then bring the symphony out, and build up the show like that. So, and
Have you
some of
ever
the new
done
stuff.
anything like that with the symphony and that kind of thing, or would this be your first time?
Well, for me as a solo, it would be the first time. With Heart, we did the Royal Albert Hall show with the symphony there a few years back, which is, it's available on DVD. But that was a really thrilling night. It was really a beautiful night to have some of the Heart songs all scored with big orchestra. We did all kinds of cool stuff with them, a lot of songs with them. But yeah, so I think that's a good, just a really good plan to have, like looking forward to doing something like that with the symphony, and on kind of every level, grow it out to the full-on symphony.
Well, just a couple more things here. I mean, you've been a hugely influential artist for a lot of up-and-coming guitar players out there. What do you want them to feel when they pick up that guitar in the stores? Because it's out now. What do you hope they feel when they pick that up?
Well, I hope they feel really cool when they pick that guitar up, because it's a cool guitar, and it's definitely a rock and roll guitar.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll do jazz, it'll do whatever you want it to do, but I think it's a guitar that should make you feel cool when you turn it up extra loud, and just blast.
I like it. Well, Nancy,
larger than life.
Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah.
We're very excited. Nancy Wilson's Epiphone Fanatic Nighthawk is available now. We're so stoked. Go check it out at a retailer near you. Your new solo record is coming very, very soon. We're all excited for that as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. Stay healthy, and we hope to see you back out on the road making music again soon.
Oh, yeah. We really want to do that too. Well, take care. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure.